Together, we will make America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you so much for joining us. I saw someone in the chat ask me, wondering if I knew anything about E. Jean Carroll. I have to know exactly what you mean. What do I know about E. Jean Carroll? Do I know about the case? Is there new information about E. Jean Carroll? What I can't tell you off the top of my head, billionaire Trump-hating mega donor Reid Hoffman bankrolled her lawsuits against him. I know that the case, both of them, totally fake. President Trump was never found to have raped E. Jean Carroll. E. Jean Carroll got the timelines wrong. E. Jean Carroll claimed to have worn a dress that had not yet been produced on the date that Donald Trump had supposedly approached her in a Nordstrom's dressing room. I can tell you that E. Jean Carroll was paid a $10 million bounty for her book deal. And I can tell you that E. Jean Carroll also thinks rape is sexy. And they had to cut away and go to commercial when she was being interviewed on CNN. I know quite a bit about E. Jean Carroll, but if there is new information about E. Jean Carroll, like perhaps maybe it's come out that she's even deeper into the Democrat hoax than we even knew before, I would love to hear about it. Either way, we got a lot to talk about, guys. Plenty to discuss. I hope you're ready, because I know I am. Well, as you can see from the screen right here, fake Ukrainian whistleblower Eric Ciaramella and his cohort from the OIG, Michael Atkinson, have been criminally referred. So do me a favor, everyone, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn. We're about to get into it right about now. Yes, she also had a cat named Vagina. That's right. She's a notorious weirdo. I can also tell you that about E. Jean Carroll. Yeah, I have heard also that there is a recording where she admitted to it being a lie. I haven't heard the recording yet, though. I've only seen that kind of just bandied around on the internet. But I'll put that out there as a bounty right now. Be happy, anybody else out there, if you or anyone else you know finds the recording of E. Jean Carroll admitting to working with the DNC, getting the payoff, lying about what happened between her and President Trump. If you can find that recording, I want to hear it, and I would love to play it on the program. All right, you guys, we have a lot to discuss today. During the opening of the show, if you were on Rumble, there were a couple of glitches that were going on. I believe I got that sorted, so everything should be good. I want to give a big shout out, first of all, to my good friend Esther G13 over on Pilled, dropping some shades. She says, I don't comment or chat that much, but I still watch you, and I love you and Lisa, Zach. Love and hugs to all the Red Pill 78 family. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Oh, yes, thank you, Smooth Haven. Appreciate that. You're absolutely correct. One time, E. Jean Carroll did definitely tweet about how she loved The Apprentice. I think she also tweeted about how sexy Donald Trump was. Anyways, at the end of the day, E. Jean Carroll was a hoax. The whole thing was a psyop. It was all part of the lawfare plan to try to destroy Donald Trump, and here we are. Now, I'd also like to address something else that I see a lot of people agonizing about. Somebody had sent me an email saying that they were worried that so many people were turning on Trump. Yeah, I see it out there. There are a lot of dim-witted people out there. There are a lot of people who simply cannot see the forest for the trees. They don't get the 40,000-foot view. They get sucked into internet personalities and people farming them for clicks and rage bait. I want to be very, very clear. Donald Trump does not need anyone to like him. At the end of this second presidential administration, I believe that Donald Trump will go down in recorded history as the greatest president who ever lived. The only thing Donald Trump needs is for world leaders to respect him, to believe that he will use the power of the United States of America if it becomes necessary. And he needs the deep state here at home to feel the wrath of his guiding hand coming down upon them like the righteous hand of justice. That's the only thing he needs. Donald Trump is not running for re-election ever again. So he's not in a popularity contest, and he's not a politician. So don't feel anxiety about people online who say shit, because 9 times out of 10, you have no idea if that person is even real. And there will be people who come and go from the chat, and they will say, I can no longer support Donald Trump. I don't know if that's a real person or not. If they are a real person, by the end of the day, by the time it's all over, they're going to say, you know what, I was wrong about Donald Trump. And I've seen it time and time and time again. This is one of the reasons I continue to support him, because I have a much wider view of history while I'm looking at what's taking place here. All right, first of all, you guys, I got to give a big shout out to the sponsors of today's program. First of all, my friends over here at Kimchi One over at Brightcore. You guys, Maria Morera, she was a woman born in 1907. This is a time when horses were still sharing the streets with cars. They were Model Ts at that time. Man, she lived through 2 world wars. She also lived through the Spanish Civil War. She saw the rise of the internet. When she finally passed away in August of 2024, she was 117 years old, and she was the oldest person on record. Now, after she died, researchers examined something pretty remarkable. They found that her gut microbiome was remarkably diverse in beneficial bacteria. So when scientists started studying other similar people, they found other similar patterns. There were greater microbial diversity and a stronger gut balance. These are traits that are directly linked to immune health, heart health, and even brain health. Because your gut microbiome isn't just about digestion. It reflects how well your body adapts and how well your body functions over time. Because when your gut stays diverse, when it stays supported, you gain strength instead of losing it as the years start adding up. And this is why Maria's story matters, because longevity is not just a one miracle solution. It's about daily series of habits that nourish your internal environment. And consuming kimchi is one of the strongest and simplest ways that you can help replenish your beneficial bacteria and help to maintain that microbial balance. And this right here is why Brightcore created Kimchi One. Delivering the benefits of fermented kimchi to you in a convenient capsule, it helps to restore your gut's natural balance every single day. It is super easy to take. And today you guys can get 25% off your order when you use the code REDPILL at the link below. Or for the best deal, you can call them directly. Call Brightcore at 888-383-5996. Detoxify your body, rebuild your gut, and take your health into your own hands starting today. Now, that number again is 888-383-5996. Thank you so much again to Brightcore for being a sponsor of the program. Really does mean a lot. We do have one more sponsor before we're going to get into the beginning portion of the show, and that's going to be my friends over at MCG Tactical. You guys, have you ever wondered what it feels like to shoot with the same precision tech that's used by U.S. Special Forces? I've got good news for you if you have, because after years of research and development, MCG Tactical has finally dropped something incredible. It's called the Stinger Combat Sight. Now, this isn't going to be just your average cheap red dot. It uses holographic technology. At one time, that was reserved for elite military and law enforcement. The Stinger actually delivers crystal clear precision. It's so accurate you could hit a dime at 300 yards without even trying. This is the exact same type of technology used by the pros, but there is a twist. Most of these sites go for something like $600 or more, and people happily pay it because they like the accuracy. I've got some myself. But right now, through an exclusive deal with MCG Tactical, you can get this mil-spec sight right now for under $200. And the better part, the best part, I might say, for my listeners, you guys are actually going to get 67% off, and they're also going to cover shipping. Right now, you can scan that QR code that you see on screen, and if for some reason you don't see it because the screen is too small, you can go to mcgtac.com/redpill to get yours today. The only catch, supply is tight, and these are flying off the shelves. So if you want the best site that's built for the best, right now is your shot. Grab one of them before they have to shut down orders and before they sell out. Thank you very much to MCG Tech, and thank you very much to all sponsors of the program. All right, we're going to begin today. Speaking of my friend President Trump, President Trump announced on the lawn of the White House earlier today that Iran has finally agreed to have no nuclear weapons. This has been the one sticking point that President Trump and the administration have been saying they are not willing to go past. This is the red line. AOB22 over on Rumble also says, no matter what, things are getting good. I really do appreciate that. All right, now let's go ahead and take a listen to President Trump and hear what he has to say.
The big thing we have to do is we have to make sure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, because if they do, you want to talk about problems, you'd have problems. So very important is that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, and they've agreed to that. Iran's agreed to that, and they've agreed to it very powerfully. They've agreed to give us back the nuclear dust that's way underground because of the attack we made with the B-2 bombers. So we have a lot of agreement with Iran, and I think something's going to happen very positive. The big thing.
All right, so President Trump suggests that something is going to happen in the very near future. We have this agreement, no nuclear weapons, no nuclear material, no nuclear dust. Of course, I think that ultimately there will be some type of an enrichment deal which will allow Iran to have their own nuclear power sources. This is something that, they've had in the past. And ostensibly their reason for enriching uranium previously was for nuclear power purposes, but they continue to enrich it far beyond that. Now, one thing that President Trump said, if Iran had nuclear weapons, we would have a lot of problems. I want to focus on this because I think it's very important. A lot of people who criticize President Trump and say MAGA is now MEGA, President Trump is doing the bidding of Israel, and I totally disagree with that. I want you to realize that Israel already has nuclear weapons. All right. You have one country with nuclear weapons that routinely gets into skirmishes with a number of other countries that exist in the region. If Iran was to also have nuclear weapons, then the threat of a nuclear attack in the Middle East would be far more realistic. Two different nations who hate each other, pointing nukes at each other, and potentially having rogue actors working within their governments ready to hit that button and send a nuke off at a moment's notice, you would immediately not only have, devastation, catastrophe, nuclear fallout that would probably not stay in the Middle East. It would go everywhere. You would also have an immediate disruption in the global oil markets, the global natural gas markets, global diesel market, the global heating oil market, the global fertilizer market. People would starve not in the Middle East. You would also have devastating loss of life in both countries and probably many other countries, because as soon as the bombs start going off, everybody is going to start sending missiles in a bunch of different directions. Yes, then you've got a situation like India, Pakistan. What happens if India and Pakistan just start shooting nukes at each other? There is constant tensions in areas where you have two countries who don't like each other, who are pointing nukes at each other. We essentially lived through decades of the Cold War because we had nukes and Russia had nukes. President Trump, once the Cold War ended, it was time to bring Russia into the fold and everybody was going to be cool. And then, of course, the deep state, the global deep state, they had to have another global boogeyman. So they had to demonize Russia all over again, the axis of evil, if you will. And we've lived through, what I would suggest is another kind of stalemate Cold War. President Trump wants to avoid that. President Trump wants Iran and all of these other nations in the Middle East to be part of the golden age, the new global order, which would be the Trump world order, not the new world order. And that's a world order where people get along. People have economic intercooperation, where the goals of one nation don't mean that you have to go to war with a nation that disagrees with you, where you can have something like the Board of Peace and you don't have to worry about something like NATO standing at the border of a country that really is not going to bother bombing you, because that makes no sense, okay? There is no sensical reason for Russia to go and just start attacking France or any of these other countries. What's happening in Ukraine, there's a very specific reason. It's another show. I'm not going to get into it right now. But what President Trump is attempting to do is bring peace to the entire world. He's not doing the bidding of Israel, okay? He is doing the best thing possible for the people of the United States and the people of the rest of the world. So all I ask anybody to do is think about things from a bit broader perspective, rather than thinking about it from whatever narrow point of view as you open the crack in the door, as people so often do. All right, now, I'd also like next to play for you a clip from ICE Director Todd Lyons. He spoke in a question and answer session in Congress earlier today, and he is talking about how ICE recently busted a major fraud and theft ring. It was a Chinese-led operation that was stealing gift cards from the American people. And wouldn't you know it, the men that made up this fraud ring were all Chinese nationals who had illegally entered the United States of America during the Biden administration. Let's take a listen.
What we've found is that it's key for HSI to have the ability to work international. And that is with our partnership, again, as I spoke earlier about in the Indo-Pacific region, that is key right now. The CCP is a huge threat, as well as their transnational criminal organizations that have come over here to just wreak havoc. I'll give you an example. HSI actually broke the largest gift card fraud case ever, and it was from transnational gangs within the CCP that were sending that money back to military units in China. And that all came from gift card fraud here in the United States.
So we're literally funding our own adversaries through that fraud.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was unfortunately military-age Chinese males that entered under the last administration through the porous border that were able to go. And it's something as simple as gift card fraud. We're just supplying small amounts, whether it be $20, $15, back to the People's Republic of China. And that was huge.
And that's all coming from people who can afford it the least, right? I've talked to some of these people who've been victims of fraud, and it is incredible what these transnational organizations are doing to take advantage of our most vulnerable, many of them senior citizens in places like Iowa, who are taken advantage of.
All right. So when that money is stolen from people, this is when you get calls on the phone and they say, oh, there was an overdraft at your bank. You have to go and pick up an Apple gift card and then pay us back, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of different types of these scams. Or maybe it's a pig butchering scam where a pretty Chinese girl sends you a message and says, oh, Elaine, I'm ready to meet for lunch tomorrow. Can you show up? And then, oops, I'm sorry. I must have texted the wrong number. Who are you? What's your name? How old are you? Wow, you're really handsome and I bet you're successful. Let's talk more. Anyways, that money gets stolen. It gets funneled back into China. It also, I would imagine, is also part of the money that is being funneled into Act Blue, because there is a lot of foreign money that's been ending up in Act Blue. But I just thought that this would be a good thing to highlight because it hasn't gotten any news coverage. And it is not only related to illegal immigration, it's also related to espionage, could potentially be related to illegal money being funded into campaigns, and obviously it's related to fraud. So a couple of good things that are being done there. Now, let's also take a look at the E-Verify system. Now, the E-Verify system is a federal government system that allows agencies, employers, banks to verify whether or not somebody is an American citizen. Some states require use of the E-Verify system when you hire somebody so that you can verify whether their information is accurate. It's also now starting to be used at banks to verify people's citizenship. Now, some states require the use of E-Verify. Some states require the use of E-Verify for some types of employment. Some states do not require E-Verify, and some states openly ban the use of E-Verify. Now, when we're looking at the states that do require E-Verify, since President Trump came back into office, we've seen an 83% reduction in the presence of illegal aliens. Why? Because they're not citizens. They don't have accurate information, and they will no longer be able to work. So then they're going to have to migrate someplace else or go back home using the CBP Home app. Now, this information is coming from the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. Now, Florida, where I live, requires E-Verify for some employers. The same with Texas, same with Louisiana. But you have a great block of states right here: Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Arizona, and Utah that all require E-Verify to be used for most types of employment. I don't know the breakdown on what types of jobs are requiring it and which aren't. But as you can see, the vast majority of the states in America do not require E-Verify. Those are the states that can be found in yellow. The two states that have prohibited the use of E-Verify are California and Illinois, two of the states where we know have the greatest populations of illegal aliens probably anywhere in the United States of America. My Undivided Life dropped $20 and says, ice cream money for after the show. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate the support. All right. Now, so again, we are continuing to push down the number of illegal aliens all across this country. And some of the people who are the most upset about that are the George Soros bought and paid for far left prosecutors like Mary Moriarty. Is that her name? Yes. District Attorney Mary Moriarty from Hennepin County. Now, she is obviously a leftist. She is Hennepin County is like where Minneapolis is. She has just announced that she is filing felony assault charges against an ICE agent for an incident that took place in Minnesota. Now, I don't know how the federal government is going to respond to this, but this seems to me to be an excellent opportunity to come back and say, you know, hey, guess what? The supremacy clause of the Constitution, the federal government of the United States has got priority anything that you, the state of Minnesota, might potentially want to do. So it was being reported because she gave a 40-minute press conference earlier today by local news there in Hennepin County. Moriarty has announced that her office has filed 2 counts of assault against an ICE agent during this presser. She said, today our office has charged Gregory Donald Morgan, an ICE agent, with 2 counts of second-degree assault. There is now a warrant for Mr. Morgan's arrest, which allows law enforcement to arrest him anywhere in the country. Good luck getting him arrested in some other part of the country. Now, I mentioned that Moriarty is connected to George Soros. He backed her campaign back, when she was first elected. And she says that this case is from an incident that took place in February on Highway 62. I guess Morgan was allegedly driving an unmarked rented SUV illegally on the shoulder of the eastbound lanes of the Portland Avenue exit. Moriarty said Morgan was appearing to bypass slower traffic and going after the victims in the car. Well, the victims are the illegal aliens. Then, according to Hennepin County DA, the alleged victim's vehicle moved into a legal lane and Morgan moved alongside him. ICE went on to allegedly threaten the driver and passenger with his gun. After the victim's vehicle moved back to the legal lane, Mr. Morgan sped up alongside the victim's vehicle. Morgan was then shown visibly slowing his vehicle to match the pace of the victim's vehicle, opened his window, and pointed his duty weapon directly at both victims in the other vehicle while continuing to drive illegally on the shoulder. I think I remember this video actually coming out because I believe that I showed it on the program. And he definitely pointed a weapon, if it's the video that I'm remembering, but it was a pepper ball gun. It wasn't an actual duty weapon. All right. Now, as KSTP notes, these are the first criminal charges against federal law enforcement to come out of Operation Metro Surge. That was the ICE operation in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. While the operation itself was a success, we did have the deaths of 2 far-left radical protesters, Renee Good and Alex Pretty. It was a pretty good series of shots, if you ask me. KSTP reported that Moriarty claimed during the press conference that her office was able to bring charges in Morgan's case because it was handled by the Minnesota State Patrol and it followed supposedly typical processes of information gathering. Now, Morgan is 35. He lives in Temple Hills, Maryland. He's now got these 2 counts of second-degree assault with a dangerous weapon hanging over his head. He was charged via warrant. Of course, he's not going to be in custody. According to the Office of the Reviser of Statutes in Minnesota, second-degree assault in Minnesota is a felony involving the use of a dangerous weapon. If he is convicted, he faces up to 7 years in prison and a $14,000 fine. This is not the first time that Moriarty has suggested she is going to do something like this. She said previously she wanted citizens of Minnesota to submit evidence of so-called illegal activity by Homeland Security agents, and she and her office are currently investigating at least 17 incidents of what they call potential criminal acts perpetrated by ICE and Customs and Border Patrol. Now, despite all that, you might remember Mary Moriarty for a different reason. She set a Somali immigrant free who was in custody for rape. He then went on to rape again. And, of course, there's no justice in that case. But I would like to take you to a case where I'm hoping we are going to get justice. I'm sure you remember Ola Olakatuan Adon Abel. He was the UK national who was nationalized as an American citizen very quickly in 2022 under the Biden administration. And he just recently murdered 2 women, shot a homeless man in a parking lot. And one of the women that he murdered, he also shot in the face 6 times, stabbed her and raped her. And she was a employee of the Department of Homeland Security. Hilariously, his lawyer is making the argument at his recent bond hearing that she wants the judge to give him a bond and allow him to get out of jail because he or she claims that Mr. Abel is not a danger and won't flee. Are you effing kidding me? This guy already has a pattern of behavior very similar to what he was just arrested for. He just murdered 2 women, one of them extremely brutally, tried to kill a 3rd man, also raped one of the women that he killed, stabbed, and shot in the face 6 times, I might add. And she's going to make the argument that he's not a danger, he's not going to flee. I mean, I can only hope that the judge who is overseeing this case is aware of his prior charges. I mean, you would think that that kind of shit is available. But even more than that, just looking at the circumstances of the case as it is, hopefully they're aware and he's not going to be allowed out on bond. So, yeah, you would think you laugh, NF, you laugh for bond for murder, but it's happening. These people hate us. These judges want more death. All right, now, do you guys also remember the former mayor of Gettysburg, Chad Allen Carr? Chad Allen Carr was a gay pride activist. He was charged in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania for raping children. And then after he was charged, he fled the state and went to Texas. Well, in the meantime, 3 more victims have stepped forward, and it appears that Mr. Carr is a serial child rapist. And he is also a Democrat, I might add, although I don't know how much that necessarily has to do with it, although the types of people who are running local LGBTQ pride organizations and raping kids, for some reason, they just seem to all be coming up Dem. Anyways, he was arrested again, and we actually have some of the body cam footage. It was back in March initially when he was initially forced to resign as mayor. He was only in office for 3 months, and when he resigned, he knew that he was about to be charged for the molestation of children. He didn't tell the public, though. He just said it was a personal legal matter. A couple of days later, authorities in Pennsylvania got him on the initial felony charges for the grooming and sexual exploitation of a minor that he met through community theater. That's another thing you got to look out for. If you're going and being a part of community theater and you got somebody... I mean, just come on, guys. Come on. Don't let your kids do community theater unless you're going to be there the whole time. Anyways, Carr was also the president of Gettysburg Pride. He was the face of the LGBTQ community in this historic Pennsylvania town. The young boy that he groomed was a 16-year-old that he met through a high school musical production, and it actually occurred between 2011 and 2013. So now the young man is an adult, and he's come forward. That victim, now as an adult, reported that Carr solicited explicit photographs from him, also explicit videos. They mutually engaged in video sex acts via Skype, and they also shared nude images with each other. Carr later described the interactions as merely late-night talks. Well, obviously, they were more than late-night talks, and with 3 more victims coming forward, I wonder if they were all groomed and abused in the same method that Carr used to bring this young man into this situation. Now, when Carr was released, he had a $100,000 bond. Last Thursday, Anderson County, Texas is where he was arrested. It was Adams County sheriffs who issued the fresh warrant after these 3 additional victims came forward, all accusing Carr of sexual assault and soliciting explicit images from minors. Now, they tracked him down in Texas. The Adams County Sheriff coordinated with the Anderson County Sheriff. They took him into custody without delay. And here, we're going to watch the video of him being arrested because, once again, Schadenfreude is perfectly acceptable to engage in a situation like this.
have you go ahead and set the dog down.
I'm sorry, what?
Set the dog down.
Okay.
Thanks, sir. Turn around. Place your hands behind your back.
They've got a warrant for Pennsylvania.
You got anything on you?
A warrant from Pennsylvania.
A warrant for what?
It's going to be a child case.
We're going to talk to you about that.
Okay.
Pennsylvania has issued a warrant for you for some reason.
For some reason.
We're just here to serve you.
Can you call the attorney?
I will.
Yeah, let them do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Limeball, we're going to...
I wouldn't say anything from you. They got 3 new cases on it, okay? So,
Okay.
if you want to tell them, that's up to you. I'm not going to tell your business to your
Yes, sir.
parents. You're a grown man.
I understand.
This is between you and them up there.
I understand.
If you want to talk to your parents, I suggest talk to your attorney about it. You can say to your parents whatever you want to tell them.
I understand. Thank you, sir.
Watch your head, watch your head. Good job. Yeah, and I pulled everything out of his pockets.
Oh, he's a big boy.
All right. And it is going to lock up, so don't lean back too much.
Okay.
All right. Well, hopefully they don't let him out of jail this time. Obviously, no one is safe around Mr. Carr. Also, no one is safe around this man right here. This is another story about yet another rogue judge who set someone free. This guy's name is Cedric Valdez, and we'll find out about him in just a moment. But we're not talking about just 1, 2, or 3 victims in this instance. We're talking about dozens upon dozens of victims. All of these cases, sexual abuse in the 3rd degree. Let's take a look.
Back in January, Cedric Valdez was arrested and charged with sexually assaulting 3 women and 1 minor, and for practicing massage without a license. Police allege that over the span of months, Valdez targeted women at several locations, including the Sunset Esplanade, a Hillsborough Planet Fitness, Goodwill on Southeast Century Boulevard, and the Washington Square Mall in Tigard. Then in February, after Fox 12 aired this story, 14 more women came forward, saying Valdez also assaulted them. Finally, on Wednesday, as Valdez went before a judge, the state's attorney told the court the number of potential victims keeps growing every day.
To date, there have been 79 identified females that the defendant came into contact with, and 31 of those potential sex abuse victims.
Plus, the state brought up that he has an outstanding warrant for his arrest from California for allegedly exposing himself to a 14-year-old girl. One of Valdez's alleged victims, who will not be named, told the judge through a translator that she would fear for her safety if Valdez is allowed to be released.
After he assaulted me, I haven't been able to sleep well. I have problems at work. In fact, one time when I was at work, I saw a person that looked like him and urinated myself.
Last month, the judge ruled
Ouch.
Valdez could be released if he could prove that he has a place to stay. Wednesday in court, his lawyer suggested he could couch surf between his friends' houses, but Judge Colburn ruled that's not good enough.
Thank God.
Require that he install a GPS device within inclusion zone of any house that he can reside in with a responsible person and remain on house arrest. There you go.
Well, thank God that judge had just a little bit of common sense. But the judge who let him out before obviously needs to be addressed. I can't believe that they would even consider allowing somebody like this man to leave the custody of police. All right, now yesterday we spoke about the upcoming vote in the House on whether or not to extend temporary protected status to the hundreds of thousands of Haitians, most of which came here to the United States of America illegally during the Biden regime. And it was bad yesterday. 6 Republicans joined Democrats in voting to extend TPS status to those hundreds of thousands of Haitians. Now, today it was 10. 10 House Republicans voted with them, and so the vote was even bigger. Now, as I said yesterday, this bill has a 0% chance of being put into law because now that it's being voted on in the House, it has to get sent to the Senate. The Senate does not have to bring it to the floor to vote on it. If they do bring it to the floor to vote on it, the votes to pass it will not be there. If by some strange, ironic reason of God laughing at us, it does end up on President Trump's desk, he has a big, fat, Sharpie veto pen, and there is no way in hell that he will sign it into law. I would, however, like to play you a segment of a Representative Brandon Gill calling these 10 traitorous rhinos to account on the floor of the House, discussing the matter of these illegal aliens that the House has voted now to essentially give a level of amnesty to.
There's roughly 350,000 Haitians covered under temporary protective status in the United States. Of those, an estimated 91% entered this country illegally.
The vast majority of them do not hold gainful employment either.
69% came in and estimated under the Biden administration. In other words, what this bill does is codify open borders of the previous administration that the American people overwhelmingly rejected the last election cycle. Mr. Speaker, no serious country tolerates virtually unlimited numbers of foreigners breaking and entering. And yet that's what this bill does. There's roughly 350,000 Haitians.
So essentially, these Republicans have voted with certain businesses who are in favor of keeping illegal aliens here so that they can take jobs from American citizens, get paid a significantly lower amount, and also help to push America closer to a third world nation status. There is no world that exists under President Trump where these people will be allowed to stay. Now, Don Bacon yesterday on X was saying, I've spoken to my business constituents here in Nebraska, and they said if we got rid of these 350 working Haitians, then it would be a tragedy. We don't have enough people to fill jobs as it is. No. That is absolutely not true. There are not enough jobs to go around, and that's because we've got way too many people here. It's also one of the reasons we have a major housing shortage in the United States, is because so many of these illegal aliens have been given financing. They've been given financing, and they've taken homes from American citizens. Now, there is a man that I follow on X who does, his name is Anti-Sync, something like that. He does real estate videos. He does foreclosure videos. And the number of foreclosures that he has come across that are just merely homes abandoned by illegal aliens who have either fled the country or have been arrested and deported has quite literally exploded since President Trump came back into office. So take a look at this right here. This is a confirmed deportation a confirmed deportation a home that has been given back to the bank, and it's just full of stuff. It's full of nice stuff. Some of it's nicer than the shit I have. I'm sure it might be nicer than many of the things you have. But all of it is going to get trashed. When these banks take these houses back, they don't sell this stuff. They don't donate it to the Goodwill so that an American can buy a nice 75-inch TV at a lower price. No, it just gets sent to the dump. Goes into the dump. All of their crap goes to the dump.
Did they get deported? Fully furnished. But the drawers are all empty. Take a look at this crack. Indicator foundation issues. This looks like it was an add-on. You could see that this looks like this was the...
Gee, hear the fire alarm. Ding!
The outdoor patio. And they built this room. Every corner has some damage. You can see the water leak there from upstairs. We go into this room. I don't know what room is that. Maybe laundry room. A washer, dryer, bathroom. This is where the dining room used to be. They were working on this house. All the kitchen stuff is still here. Got to get a picture of that.
God, every freaking one is going off. Jeez, oh, Pete.
TV, all the clothing and all the goods gone. The furniture, all left behind. This is one of the weirdest ones. Again, more furniture. All the clothes is gone. And then we have another TV. It's a duplex and they're both empty.
They're both empty. Both of them both sides of the house had illegals living in it.
I just can't get in the second door. What do you guys think?
Absolutely. So yes, Tricia says, Zach, did you see my email about illegals in California apartment complex my friend lives in? I didn't, but that doesn't surprise me at all because illegal aliens have more rights in California than natural-born American citizens. Yes, it's very sad. Think about, and here's the other thing. Every single time a home is repossessed by a bank, they have made a substantial amount of money on the money that was put into the home to begin with. And then they get to sell it to somebody else at fair market value. Probably, you know, it's elevated now because of the way the housing market is. And they make even more money off of it. So they don't care if they're selling it to an illegal or they're selling it to an American. They're going to bend you over anyways. I've told my foreclosure story many times. I had 2 houses that were foreclosed when my dad died back in 2009. I had my house, my first house that I bought. I didn't have credit when my daughter was born. I was young. I was in college, and my dad was a mortgage broker. He had great credit. So he bought the house with his name, was selling it to me on a land contract. It was very informal. We didn't think he was going to die several years later. And then when he passed away, his will wasn't legal. So we had to go through probate, and they wouldn't give me either of the houses. His house that had, you know, where he lived, and then my house where I lived with my daughter. They said that both houses, because it was 2009 and the mortgage crisis was going on, they wouldn't refinance either house for me because my credit still wasn't good enough. And basically I would have to come with like 75% of what they said the value was. And then they would finance the rest of it. I didn't have that much money. There was no way, you know. I mean, my dad was not a rich man. When he died, we had a little bit of money left over after we paid for all the expenses, paid for the lawyer for probate and all that stuff. So they repossessed both houses. They foreclosed on both of them. However, it took about a year for that process. I went and lived in my dad's house with my daughter. And then my friend, who was kind of struggling at the time, I let him live in my house. And I just let him live there for free. I was like, I'm not having to pay for anything. You don't have to pay anything either. Just get your shit together. And anyways, by the time they repossess the houses, they come and, a couple of days maybe before they're going to be there. So I was in the process of buying a house. I ended up doing that. That was the house that I lived in from 2011 until I moved here to Florida. And the real pisser was that once they repossessed both the houses, they sold them both at auction for significantly less than they tried to sell me the house for. So like my house, they sold it for like 25 grand to somebody who was not me, obviously. And then my dad's house, it was the same kind of thing. So I didn't get to keep either house, and it was a huge hassle. But banks are crooked, and that's the moral of the story. All right. Now, I also was able to find a little bit of information about baby Jessica. So tragically, I guess baby Jessica has had a bad couple of years. They call it the curse of baby Jessica. So if you don't remember, yesterday somebody in the chat had said that baby Jessica was arrested recently for some type of domestic violence. Her name is Jessica McClure-Morales. She's 40 years old now. If you guys were alive in the 80s, I think probably most of you were, if not all of you. In 1987, baby Jessica, she was 18 months old. She fell down only an 8-inch well pipe. And she was stuck down there for something like 52, 58 hours, somewhere around that time. And it was a huge thing. You know, cable news was kind of in its fledgling years back in 1987. I think they had CNN and maybe Headline News, but it was the only thing that they reported on. Anyways, they were able to save baby Jessica. But since she came out, both she and the people who were able to rescue her, they all had like a really series of unfortunate events. So I guess that on April 11th, Jessica McClure Morales was allegedly assaulting her husband of the last 20 years, Daniel Morales. This was at their home in Midland County, Texas. And they arrested her. This is her being rescued back in 1987. If you guys were around, you probably remember this picture. I mean, I remember, I was born in 1978. Okay, so I'm young, right? I'm 9 years old. I'm seeing this happen, and I'm just like, wow. And I was kind of struck by the way the news was structured to like keep everybody's mind focused on it. Anyways, Jessica was released on bond. Her mugshot has been released. We'll take a look at that in a moment. But after she was arrested, and again, this is after 58 hours, they had to bring in drill crews, miners, a lot of paramedics. And this is her in her arrest picture. I didn't know this, but I guess that the paramedic who actually saved her, Robert O'Donnell, I don't know if that is Robert O'Donnell right here, but I mean, he looks to be about 37. He's obviously a paramedic. I guess that he committed suicide. He's the guy who shimmied down this like shaft they had dug to pull her out and then pass her off to another paramedic by the name of Steve Forbes. He went and shot himself in a pasture on his parents' ranch in Stanton, Texas. He left a note and he said, "I'm sorry to check out this way, but life sucks." Anyways, O'Donnell had been given like a hero's response. I mean, they brought him to the White House. He did a bunch of media appearances. There was a made-for-TV movie that was made about the whole thing. And in 1989, when they made it, he actually starred as a reporter covering the event in the show. And he was, I guess, a contestant on a game show called The Third Degree with Bert Convoy as well. I never heard of that before, but this is Jessica and her husband, I guess, in happier times. Here is baby Jessica being held by George H.W. Bush, who was the vice president at the time. She's wearing his glasses. I mean, after everything we know about the Bush family, that's a little creepy. But 2 years after that appearance on that game show, Bert Convoy died suddenly with an aggressive and inoperable cancer. So there's another death connected to it. Now, O'Donnell was, I guess, one of the reasons he killed himself is he couldn't handle the fame. Like, he did not like the fact that he was thrust into the spotlight. And and then after the fame, nobody cared about him. This is something very real, guys. Like, I mean, people who get these brushes with internet virality, like once that goes away, if you are attached to that, if you like allow that to kick off your brain happy signals, then it can be devastating. And like once people didn't care about him anymore, I guess he had like PTSD, and then he got hooked on prescription pain medicine, and then his wife left him, and then he lost his job at the Midland Fire Department. And he told his brother, I guess right before he committed suicide, he said ever since that Jessica deal, his life fell apart. His brother said this in 1995 after he was found dead in that field. There's a deal that happens when people are in these really stressful situations. It's so hard for them to heal afterwards. I never, ever would have thought that would be the case. But anyways, here is Jessica and her husband with their babies. Oh, actually, these are their grandchildren. I don't know what their children look like. But yeah, so it just seems like, there's just a bunch of weird things that happen to people after this. The issues like between Jessica and her family, her dad, Chip McClure, I guess, and her mom were pretty young when they had Jessica. I guess that they were only 16 and 17 years old. And there's, I guess, somebody named Reba, who was another one of their, I'm sorry, Reba must be the mother of Jessica. And she felt like she was just stuck home with the babies because she was barely a kid herself. I don't know. Anyways, and of course, her father, he felt like he couldn't do anything, so he was all messed up about the situation, allegedly, at the time. He wanted to help out, but he couldn't help out, and basically watching his daughter die slowly in this pipe. So for the 90s, I guess his life was kind of messed up. Him and his first wife, they got divorced. He had a couple of different wives, a couple of different divorces. Now, I guess he's married to a woman named Amy, and I think things are better for them. Like I said, actually, I mean, her father follows me on X. So, Chip, I don't know if you're watching the show, buddy, but I had no idea that life had been so difficult for everybody after this. So Now I guess he's the CEO of an aircraft acquisition firm, and things are doing really, really well, and that's awesome. And I can only hope that something, goes right in Jessica's life. So I guess that Jessica's stepfamily also had problems. Her stepsister, Gracie Adams, who was 25, was found murdered not that long ago in Nashville, murdered by shotgun. Her girlfriend, Sarah, 29, was charged with criminal homicide. And after a brief period at large, the police found Sarah Stacy, the girlfriend. She implicated herself in a police interview. However, she hasn't gone to court yet, hasn't been convicted, and it's unclear if she's going to enter a plea deal. I guess everything is kind of up in the air. So anyways, just like really series of tragic things. This is her stepsister right here, murdered. This is the woman who allegedly murdered her. And I guess that in 2008, during the financial crisis, Jessica had been given a trust fund. There was a $1.2 million trust fund that was set up from all of the donations that her and her family had received. Now, she wasn't allowed to touch that money until she turned 25. She didn't turn 25 until 2011. So because of the financial collapse, it completely devastated that $1.2 million trust fund. And basically she was able to buy a house when she got access to the money. So she does have 2 children of her own, and that's with Daniel. They've also got grandkids now as well. And I don't know what happened with the domestic violence stuff, but man, it's a really tragic story. And I mean, to be honest, it kind of makes me just realize that like everybody's life is a tragic story. Like, let's be honest here, guys. I mean, everybody has a series of effed up things that happens in their lives. And I wonder if Jessica and her family's lives would have been much different than what was reported here if it wasn't for the fact that the cameras were on them and people were paying attention. Because I'm telling you, my life has been totally messed up. I think many people in the audience have had, a series of crazy things that have happened in their lives. Like, that's just kind of par for the course. So all we can do is pray for people and ask that God, bestow them with, some peace. And I'll tell you what, when you ask God for help, when you submit yourself to him, everything becomes infinitely easier. Even when you are faced with trials and tribulations, it all seems trivial because this is temporary. Your time on this plane of existence is merely a moment in time. It's a blip on the cosmic timeline. And at the end of this, there is something far greater waiting for all of us. So I hope that maybe gives people peace if they haven't there. All right. Now, let us move on to the next story. This is getting back. I probably should have paired this with the, Life is a Blues song. Absolutely. And Hazel Kitty says, people that have never had hardship have no clue that there are people like that out there too. And I guess, I didn't realize, Hazel, that life was not fucked up for everybody until a couple of years ago. It was funny because I remember I was on a live stream and I said something about, the fact that, everybody's life is hard, right? And a bunch of people in the chat were like, not mine. Like, I've never had hardship. I was like, wow, that must be nice. I didn't think that was real. I didn't think that people didn't have hardship. But I guess it's true. I mean, some people have a much easier life than others. Oh, God, Ray says, I inherited 4 homes. I'm actually thinking it was a bigger pain in the ass. Luckily, I knew what I was doing. I wouldn't have been lost if it wasn't my industry of employment. Well, good for you, bro. I'm glad everything worked out, but I bet it was a total shit show. All right, so as I said at the beginning, preventing Iran from having a nuclear war. That was President Trump's red line. Now that has been solved, President Trump is currently in the process of reorganizing the global markets for many different things, but oil obviously is going to be chief among them. Some major things have happened during the course of this conflict. there have been strikes by Iran on some pretty serious and impactful Gulf ports. That's going to be a major expense. Israel has also obviously hit some really critical oil infrastructure in Iran. So that's not only going to affect the flow of energy out of the Middle East, but it's going to have a direct impact on people's lives who are living, working there, the economic damage, the need to rebuild over the next several years, maybe the next several decades. But the Strait of Hormuz is also really, really key. Now, I saw something interesting today. Europe gets all of their oil from going through the Straits of Hormuz. The United States currently has a blockade on the Straits of Hormuz. And President Trump said at the outset of this blockade, you should start buying your oil from the United States. Well, Europe has enough jet fuel, I think, for like maybe might be another 6 weeks, might be less than that. But at the end of that jet fuel reserve, they're not going to be able to fly any planes in Europe any longer unless they start purchasing jet fuel from somebody else, like, say, the United States of America. This is also now going to force any nations that were relying on oil going through the Straits or buying it from Iran, they're going to have to start getting it from somewhere else. The other day, I showed a graphic of all of these oil tankers, 2 million barrels of oil that would normally have gone through the Straits, gotten the oil, and then continued on. Instead, they made their way into the Gulf of America. It's a tremendous economic boost for the United States. And obviously, these Gulf states that were involved tangentially in this conflict, they're going to have to rework their way of doing things as well. You've got Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. They are in the process of leveraging their current existing infrastructure. There was a pipeline, the East-West pipeline, and the Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline, which one of those, the East-West pipeline, they never bothered to turn that on. Well, now Saudi Arabia has turned it on because they obviously need all of this oil flowing so that they can get it out of the country and keep people moving. And that's going to distribute oil across all of the land that the Red Sea encompasses. It's going to make up for a lot of that lost capacity that's now not going through the Strait of Trump, perhaps. They're also now considering whether or not they should expand these pipelines, build out new infrastructure altogether. That's probably a good idea. One option that is worth the Trump administration's attention would be ramping up political and financial support for the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. That would facilitate the construction of pathways to move all of that energy out of the Gulf and then into Europe and India, which, of course, would allow for complete bypassing of the strait, and it would also strengthen our relationships with those regional partners. Even if the strait fully opens after hostilities end, the strategic calculus is now going to have shifted in favor of the United States and also the creation of those economic partnerships, which is a vital part of President Trump's plan to bring peace to the world and help all of the nations of the planet enter into the golden age. It also makes the nations within the Gulf choose sides, and it sure looks like everybody has chosen the side of the United States. One of the other aspects of this is that Iran operates itself through these shadow banking networks. Scott Bessent had said earlier this week that all of these other nations where Iran has these shadow bank accounts, they're now allowing the United States of America to come in and sequester those bank accounts where all this money is. And it also then, of course, is going to put additional pressure on whatever government is still existing in Iran so that they can make a deal. It seems like that's exactly what's happened. Now, in 2024, anyways, 70% of the funds that we were talking about there passed through these opaque companies, and most of those companies were based in the United Arab Emirates. The UAE has also directly aligned itself with the United States of America in this whole thing, and they're taking steps to cut off all of that cash. They've also threatened to freeze billions of dollars in Iranian assets that they know exist there. So that is also going to be a huge reorganization plan. At the end of the day, what this does is lock in United States energy dominance. And one of President Trump's main parts of his pillar of his platform since the very beginning has been drill, baby, drill, and to ensure that the United States is completely dominant in the energy production market. South Korea. They are obviously an ally of the United States. About 70% of their crude oil comes through the Straits of Hormuz or the Straits of Trump. Taiwan's semiconductor sector is also pretty well exposed. A lot of oil is going through that. India gets a third of its crude from the Gulf. All of these regions are having price spikes, but they can immediately alleviate it if they get their oil from the United States of America. So, again, just want to drive that idea home. Now, President Trump is also putting pressure on other nations around the world, asking them to sign up for something called trade over aid. We've already reduced USAID to little more than an office at the State Department. And if the nations of the world engage in economic trade rather than just asking for a blank check to, make a promise of something politically, then that drives home the idea of the America First value system that President Trump has talked about. And also for those countries to put their own people first. Because every time you just give somebody a check, they're not going to have any reason to do anything for it. You say, here is free money. That's it. Nobody's going to produce anything if they don't have to. Nobody's going to make a deal if they don't have to. Marco Rubio, as the Secretary of State, has just now ordered diplomats to start gauging support for this proposal before they put it forward at the United Nations at the end of next month. I guess a cable was put out where he explained how the United Nations, rather than telling the United States of America what to do, we're now going to use it to promote America First values and, most importantly, create business opportunities for U.S. companies. Also, America, having entered the golden age, is going to be built on a booming economy fueled by pro-business policies, deregulation, lower taxes, and a liberated energy industry. It was private business that developed all of the world's successful economies, not government aid, not free checks. In a U.S. diplomatic note, which was shared with the source for this article, it shredded how richer nations have splurged billions of dollars on foreign aid projects. And obviously, those foreign aid projects don't do much to elevate the nations where they're giving those checks. Well, 9 times out of 10, that money ends up being funneled into black projects, intel ops, and going back into the pockets of politicians in the nations where they came from. For decades, government aid has been flowing from developed countries with little to no economic impact. It's not served the world's economic development challenges. It's often created dependency, inefficiency, and corruption. And I argue that those 3 pillars right there were always the goal. Dependency upon the nation that is giving the money, inefficiency, meaning that the money doesn't actually do anything. It just leads to fraud, waste, and abuse. And then corruption, because then you're going to have a government made of bureaucrats that are simply going to do the bidding of whatever intel agency is connected to that check. Now, after President Trump was inaugurated, the plans to eliminate approximately $60 billion in foreign aid were announced. Spending was cut by 92% on grants that were previously issued by USAID. And there was an audit done showing that nearly 15,000 grants and targeting 10,000 of them for elimination, which is the majority of what happens at USAID. And then you've got all of this free food that USAID hands out. Those bags of grain that are meant to, stop people from starving, they get stolen by warlords and then sold at markets. And because you've got all of this food glutting the market, nobody has any need to figure out how to grow food for themselves. So the State Department obviously vowed to address decades of this institutional drift and said that every dollar we spend, every program we fund must be justified with the answer to 3 simple questions. Does it make America safe? Does it make America stronger? And does it make America prosperous? Oftentimes, that money coming out of USAID did none of the above. Now, also, we have the same similar problems here in the United States. Welfare leads to lazy people who simply feel entitled to get free checks, and it leads to people developing more sophisticated methods of fraud. J.D. Vance's anti-fraud task force has just announced the suspension of nearly 500 hospices in Los Angeles that together were taking nearly $600 million in suspected fraudulent payments from the United States government. Now, this is over and above the busts that we had last week. We're talking 447 hospices and 23 home health agencies that were all suspected to be fraudulent. We know the number of suspensions is roughly a 539% increase from the mere 70 that were reported at the beginning of the month. So now here we are in the not even done with the month of April, and we have over 500 businesses that were all fraudulent that have now been suspended in California alone. Now, they said where there is fraud, the task force will find it. We will not stop until every hard-earned taxpayer dollar goes towards honest Americans who deserve them. To all fraudsters, good luck trying to hide from Vice President Vance's task force, the White House official said. The anti-fraud task force is reviewing and pursuing every possible lead. These suspension numbers and the dollar value saved are only going to increase. So the initial findings when Dr. Oz and CMS went in there was, $259 million in Medicaid fraud in Minnesota alone. That has already been cut. And then, of course, we had the initial raids in the beginning of April. That was $500 million that was identified there. Now we have a suspension of another nearly 500. That leads to another $600 million, more than $500 million. So now we're looking at over $1 billion in fraud that has already been identified and shut down. And we're 2 weeks into April, you guys. All of this is part of the DOGE plan. People said DOGE was ending, that fraud was not going to be identified. And yet here we are. Like I told you at the time, they may have shut down the temporary DOGE agency as a separate agency, but why do you need a separate DOGE agency when you can just put a DOGE office into every federal government agency so that they can work directly on a day-to-day basis with the people who are actually overseeing all of this stuff? That makes so much more sense. It's more intelligent if you really want to catch people. It's also better than spending money to have like a whole separate agency doing stuff on their own. So I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware that this is happening. And they said that this was going to get more and more intense. You're going to see more of these people getting arrested. You're going to see more businesses getting shut down. And here we are. Okay, so Tomcat says, I'm still waiting to see if DOGE did anything about the Medicare, Medicaid that went to foreign countries. So that is probably going to be something for the anti-fraud task force. And if money was being sent to foreign countries, then you have to have somebody here in the United States that you'll be able to charge for that. Unless, you can specifically identify people in other states. But I would imagine that it would, because it's all part of the same fraudulent system. Now, again, speaking of fraud, we have an interesting situation where the Trump administration has just announced a cut to contracts that were previously going to Catholic charities. $11 million in contracts that otherwise would have went to these migrant shelters. And this specifically was in Miami. It's interesting that this happened at the exact same time that the Pope and President Trump seem to be getting into it. The Pope, who really, he's not a politician. He should keep his mouth shut. So this is now effectively shutting down these taxpayer subsidized operations that were housing and caring for unaccompanied illegal migrant children. Probably many of these children were being trafficked as well. So we're cutting off the pipeline, the ability for these traffickers to bring children to the United States and then pass them off into the hands of child traffickers. Now, the contract was originally through the Department of Health and Human Services, and it was supported by Monsignor Brian O. Walsh Center. This is an 81-bed shelter. There's part of a broader reunification program that the Catholic charities have been running for over 60 years. Don't know how much of that money was actually going towards this. However, they are now going to have to shut their doors down within the next 3 months. President Trump had previously promised he was going to end the radical left open borders nightmare, and Catholic Charities was a huge part of that. Many different NGOs were part of this multi-billion-dollar facilitation network, making it possible for these illegals to come into our country. This is just one small part of shutting that down. So the Archdiocese of Miami said on Tuesday that Archbishop Thomas Wensky was not immediately available to discuss the contract's cancellation or the administration's rift with the church, but shared a statement that Wensky, who is a longtime immigrants' rights advocate, wrote to the Miami Herald's editorial board. The U.S. government has abruptly decided to end more than 60 years of relationship with Catholic Charities in the Archdiocese of Miami. The Archdiocese of Miami's services for unaccompanied minors have been recognized for their excellence, and they have served as a model for other agencies throughout the country. Well, I'll tell you what, Archbishop Wensky, we're trying to create a world where it's unnecessary for anyone to have a resource program to reunify children who illegally come across the border with their parents who illegally came across the border. Let me ask you this. Why is there no Baptist Ministries child reunification program? Why is there no Methodist Ministries reunification program? Why does the Catholic Church have this stranglehold on NGO money that gets sucked out of the U.S. taxpayer? Why is the Catholic Church not asking their parishioners to fund these efforts? Because that's what any of those other churches would do. I mean, I never hear about Baptist ministers making appeals to the United States government to give more free money so that they can send people off on missions to Africa or anything like that. But they certainly ask their parishioners if they want to put some money in for those sorts of things. So anyways, the money train is turned off. That spigot has been closed, and I don't trust the Catholic Church. I was raised Catholic. I have a special place in my heart for Mass and for the service. Obviously, just for, worship in general. But I don't trust the Catholic Church. I think that this is, Lutheran Charities is the same. You're absolutely right. But I believe that this whole thing is a grift. I believe the same thing of the Lutheran ministries that get free money from the United States government. Now, Wensky says, our track record is serving this vulnerable population, and it's unmatched. Yet the Archdiocese of Miami's Catholic Charity Services for Unaccompanied Minors has been stripped of funding and will be forced to shut down within 3 months. It's not like the Catholic Church doesn't have money, right? Arcadia says, don't be ignorant. What do you mean, don't be ignorant? Are you suggesting that me asking rhetorical questions is being ignorant? Because, I know every question that I'm asking, I already know the answer for. And it's called an exercise in critical thinking. That's what I'm doing here. All of this money is going for trafficking. It's going to line the pockets of perhaps people running the church. Certainly, it's ending up in the accounts of the Vatican's private bank back in Italy. All of this stuff should not be necessary. And the very fact that the money exists to be given for free perpetuates all of these practices. There should not be a world where unaccompanied migrant children come to the United States. Okay, well, either way, I haven't seen Baptist ministries receiving money from the United States government, but I have heard a lot about Catholic ministries, Catholic services getting money from the United States. Now, all of it, as I have said, Arcadia, previously, does not resonate with me. None of that should be happening. Not only should the United States government not be paying any of these churches to operate these types of facilities, but the very nature of these facilities is something that I believe is an affront. There should be no unaccompanied migrant children coming into the United States of America, having the need to be reunited with their parents who also came illegally into the United States of America. All right, so, and again, if the Catholic Diocese wants to continue operating something like this, there's money that's available. All right. So regardless, there was also a situation where the Trump administration previously had suspended U.S. CCB cooperative agreements for refugee resettlement and Catholic services. That was way back in February of 2025. Now, they also announced they would not renew partnerships for refugee and unaccompanied children programs in April of that same year. They said they were untenable conditions, and they sought reimbursement for $24 million in prior services. So this impacted local Catholic charities affiliated nationwide that had partnered with these programs, leading to reported layoffs and program closures at multiple sites. Gradually, we are shutting all of these down. Now, the Catholic charities and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops have been raking in billions of dollars during this time. Again, I don't have the numbers on any other specific Christian denomination. However, there has been adequate reporting on Catholic charities. But all of this money ends up not doing what it was meant to do, what they have ostensibly claimed they were getting it for. In 2024 alone, these particular groups I have mentioned in this report, because again, that's the story. They pulled in over $1.4 billion while helping to redistribute all of these illegal aliens all around the country, seeking to dismantle the republic as it exists. Let me say thank you to Denise Ann. Say, Zach, I understand your lack of trust in the leaders of the Catholic Church, but I refuse to relinquish Jesus' church to the deep state. But I'm glad taxpayer money isn't going to fund this anymore. Absolutely. Yes. And I'm not saying that my faith in God or my belief in Jesus's in Jesus, his son, none of that has been shaken. All right. But I still have a lack of trust in leadership for many different institutions. But yeah, no, nothing is going to take my faith in any respect. All right. Now, the Democrats are now seeking to launch a brand new commission to remove President Trump because, of course, all of these things that I've talked about, good for America, restructuring the corruption, getting rid of fraud, only somebody who is profiting off of these things would want to see them stop. So House Democrats have just introduced new legislation to create a commission. This commission, the 25th Amendment Commission, would evaluate whether or not President Trump should be removed from office. This is just another spectacular waste of time. It's being led by New York Congressman Jamie Raskin. It would establish a 17-member panel to assess whether or not the president is fit to carry out his duties. Now, the 25th Amendment, in order for that to be invoked, has obviously got to come from his cabinet. So this 17-member commission is not going to have any force in law. It's not going to be able to get President Trump removed under the 25th Amendment. It will be another waste of time and another waste of money. More than 85 Democrats in Congress, however, have recently called for President Trump to be impeached or to be removed through the 25th Amendment following the comments he made about Iran. But it would rely on Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, which allows the vice president and candidate or a body created by Congress to declare a president unfit. Now, under this proposal, the commission would conduct a medical evaluation to determine whether the president is mentally or physically unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office. This legislation has got 50 Democrat co-sponsors. I do not see it being passed. I do not see them being successful in this endeavor. But you know who else is talking about the 25th Amendment? I already told you about Alex Jones and what's his name? Robert Barnes. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Gosh, she's either the dumbest person to previously hold office in the state of Georgia or, she's totally faking it. I am not sure. I said at the outset of this rift between President Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe it was all kayfabe. I really don't know. I don't know what to tell you. But now she is out there actively persuading or stumping for President Trump to have the 25th Amendment invoked. She says there is a grave concern for his mental capacity. I've got a grave concern for her mental capacity. I'm going to be really honest, because if you objectively look at what President Trump is doing around the world and here at home, there is no concern. He, in my estimation, is quite literally the savviest person who has ever held the office of the president. So anyways, she also said this on CNN. consider this source. She was asked about her critical statements on President Trump. You said that he made that very apocalyptic threat to essentially wipe out Iran, and a whole civilization will die tonight, will never be brought back. That's what he said about Iran. You responded, 25th Amendment. Tell us what you mean. I was absolutely shocked and horrified that the president, the man that I supported and helped get elected, would call for an entire civilization of people to be murdered. God, it's like she doesn't remember anything about anything he's ever said, which is, again, why I say she's either that stupid or she's totally faking and she's playing into this. But anyways, you know, I go back to my original statement on this. President Trump is not a politician, and I am sick of politicians paying lip service and making statements based on focus groups, making statements based upon whether or not people are going to freak out. I don't care if people freak out. You know what? I want people to capitulate. I want world leaders to stop thinking they can bully the United States of America into just cutting blank checks. I want the leaders of this world to look at the United States of America and think, you know what? Trump might just be willing to do what he says. He could just be faking. But you know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth taking a chance. I'm going to go ahead and follow along because what is the alternative? The alternative is following along with the New World Order. The alternative is continuing to harbor criminals, to traffic guns, drugs, kids, continue to subjugate the peoples of the world, or to enter the golden age. MTG wants JD to be president. She might, but I don't think that matters right now because President Trump and JD, I think, are on the exact same page. All right, you guys, I have another special message from a sponsor over here on Rumble. So please allow me to get that pulled up. Okay. All right. All right, my friends. Have you ever watched the news or a big game and thought, you know what, I know how this is going to play out? You might maybe just tweet about it, but if you could actually put these predictions to work with something like Kalshi, it might be a little bit better because Kalshi is a federally regulated exchange where you can trade on real-world events, not stocks. You got to think questions like, will inflation be higher next month? Is the Fed going to cut rates? Or will the team that you like to watch make the playoffs? Every year, each market is a simple yes or no contract, and it's priced between 1 and 99 cents. And if you're right, it settles at $1. That price is basically the crowd's probability of something happening. So if yes is trading at 75 cents and the market is saying there's maybe a 75% chance of it happening, you can use it to hedge, to speculate, or just put some skin in the game on what you already follow every single day. And right now, they've got a special offer. You can trade $10 and you will get $10. So just go to Kalshi.com/Rumble. Deposit and place your first $10 in trades, and Kalshi will give you an extra $10 to use on the platform. So if you've got a take and you don't just want to post about it, you can trade about it. Go to Kalshi.com/Rumble to get started today and get $10 free. That's KALSHI.com/Rumble. You can use the QR code on screen or the link that you'll see in the chat. Thank you very much to Rumble and Kalshi. All right. Now, let's move on from the brain rot. Once again, we've got some great news. President Trump's Department of Transportation has just yanked $73 million in funding from the state of New York. Why? Because they failed to capitulate. The Department of Transportation had requested that every single state in America vet the people they were giving driver's licenses to. The state of New York didn't want to do it. They wanted to give driver's licenses to every freaking illegal who shows up with a pen, whether or not they can read, write, or speak English. So now, $70+ million in federal highway grants is not being given to New York State. They refuse to comply with the Fed's demand to boot immigrant truck drivers with expired work authorizations off the road. So the DOT previously warned Kathy Hochul's Department of Motor Vehicles. They sent a letter, and they said the continued non-compliance would eventually lead Washington to withhold another $147 million in highway funding grants. I promised the American people I would hold any state leader accountable for failing to keep them safe from unvetted, unqualified foreign drivers. I'm delivering on that promise today by refusing to fund Governor Hochul's dangerous anti-American policies. That was Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy. He said, my message to New York's far-left leadership is clear. Families must be prioritized on American roads, because just how many Americans have died at the hands of people who never, ever should have been on the road in the first place. Now, the letter that Sean Duffy is referencing was obtained by the New York Post, and they claim that the New York Department of Motor Vehicles refuses to comply with the standards demanded by the Department of Transportation. They assess thousands of CDLs, commercial driver's licenses, and they need to remove those ones belonging to non-residents, and even more specifically with expired work authorizations. There was just a small audit that was done on the DMV by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration last year. They took a look. They determined approximately 32,000 New York CDLs were held by non-residents. Half of those 32,000 had expiration dates expanding often years beyond when their work papers had already lapsed. They were illegal in the country working at the time they had valid driver's licenses. And then, of course, a lot of them didn't even have names. Remember this one? No name given. No name given. Can you imagine going into your Department of Motor Vehicles as an American citizen and saying, I don't have a name. You just give me a driver's license? No name. You can call me no name. There you go. Can you imagine that? Like how ridiculous is that? So New York's continued refusal to fix these failures undermines that mission. We will not allow more federal dollars to support a system that falls short of the law. That was the administrator of the FMCSA, Derek Bars. Now, the federal crackdown comes amid a number of high-profile accidents. We've talked about many of them here on the program. Migrant truck drivers, including the one down here in Florida that left 3 people dead. The real irony was that the 3 people who died were Haitians, except they were 3 legal Haitians. They had moved to America legally. They killed the last 3 legal Haitians in the United States of America. I kid. They weren't the last 3. But the New York DMV staff admitted to feds when they went in there. Truckers are usually approved for an 8-year permit by default, even if they're not U.S. citizens, even if those work papers are going to last for a much shorter period of time. And that is clearly putting American lives at risk. The state stopped licensing new resident commercial truck drivers in February after they got the order from the Trump administration. But New York is maintaining it's not legally required to comply with feds' demands, that it go back and retroactively review previously issued driver's licenses after these new DOT regulations came out, much stronger than before. So, FMCSA is deeply disappointed by the DMV's refusal to take that necessary corrective action set forth by the preliminary determination, the letter said. The withholding of federal funds is the direct and necessary consequences for New York's own actions and its demonstrated disregard for federal safety standards. These charges are a baseless attempt to attack blue states because, as everyone knows, New York simply follows federally issued rules when issuing commercial driver's licenses, something that even the Trump administration has acknowledged. That's a quote from Governor Kathy Hochul's spokesperson, Sean Butler. Well, guess what, Sean? If that's the case, the rules changed. And when the rules change, you got to follow them. It's like if you're driving down the highway and they put up a new sign for the speed limit. If the speed limit was previously 55 miles per hour, and they put up a new sign that says it's now 75 miles an hour, people are going to drive 75. They're not going to say, oh, it used to be 55. I'm going to stay at 55. And conversely, If the speed limit was 75 and they find too many people die because it's 75 and they lower it to 65 or 55, you can't say it used to be 75. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. It's ridiculous. So anyways, this continues a year-long pattern of Secretary Duffy threatening to withhold money that keeps our roads, subways, and other infrastructure safe for New Yorkers. We will fight back, and once again, we will win. Well, I don't see that happening. They're not going to win in this instance. BDR1776 says, great show, Zach. My buddy said he saw something on Truth about how because of all of the deportations, rent is going down. It is true. I actually reported on it a couple of weeks ago. Average rents are starting to go down because they now have all of these empty apartments. It depends on which city or state you live in. Some of them are getting affected to a much greater degree. I'll find some stats on it, BDR, and I'll come back with that tomorrow, but it's totally true. Okay, so he says it was on the news in Arizona. Oh, yeah. Arizona is definitely one of those places because you've had a bunch of illegals living in Arizona. Now you've got all of these apartments that are basically being emptied out. S2G 109, it is definitely not happening in California because California is protecting those illegals. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. But thank you, BDR. Appreciate you, homie. Also, let me say thank you very much to Darla, who says, hey there, Zach, why so many predators? Looks like the punishment needs to come for the judges. Yes, it needs to come for the judges. And unfortunately, predators come to prey where they know they're going to be able to find victims. And unfortunately, here in the United States, for many years, those predators were encouraged to come here. They knew that nothing was going to happen to them. If they were illegals, they could get away with it. It's the same reason why you keep seeing predators showing up being teachers at schools, because they gain access to children. It's disgusting. And yes, the judges need to be held responsible. Pkwy, thank you for the can. Sulfanol, good to see you, buddy. It looks like a legal immigrant 3-letter agency operators housing. Oh, you're talking about that home that was emptied out. Abanon17 says, drop some shades. He says, I love you, bro. Anything happening? Oh, man, tons happening. We're about to talk about the big happenings in just a moment. Filter Dog, California Democrats just voted down the motion to stop AB 6264, the Stop Nick Shirley Act. I wonder if the federal government is going to step in on this. PJ Car 17 says, thank you for all you give to this community. Thank you, PJ. I appreciate you. Filter Dog says, have you looked into Operation Round River, which was run out of the Pittsburgh office of the FBI? Operation Round River. Off the top of my head, that does not ring a bell, but I'm going to take a note on that right now. Round River. And I will get back to you on that, my friend. Okay, thank you for that. All right, and Independence 4576 says, not in Kentucky. Maybe that's because you have fewer illegal aliens in Kentucky, or maybe fewer properties. I'm not exactly aware of what the housing market looks like there. I can tell you in Florida, things are going in the opposite direction. You have a huge glut in the housing market in certain areas. And also, I think that in like Nashville, there's a whole bunch of different properties that they've put on the market that were wildly expensive and they're not able to fill them. So again, it really depends regionally where you're at. All right, now, this is a story that I never thought I was going to come back to. Former Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. I reported on him back in like 2021. He was Ralph Northam's lieutenant governor, and he had a couple of claims of sexual assaults or, basically bad behavior that were made against him. Well, now he killed his wife and shot himself in the head. His kids were home, and that is the worst part. I guess he and his wife were in the middle of a horrific divorce, and last night he shot and killed his wife and then shot and killed himself. It looks like authorities were called to the 8100 block of Guinevere Drive shortly after midnight last evening. When WUSA 9 crews arrived, police were investigating the home at 8106 Guinevere Drive, which is owned by the former lieutenant governor. Upon arrival, officers discovered the man and woman dead inside the home. He shot her, shot himself. He and her, Justin and Serena's children, 16-year-old son Cameron, tragic. And then they had 16 and 14-year-old daughter Karis. I'm sorry, I guess that maybe they've got two kids, Justin, Cameron, and Karis. They were both home at the time. Thank God he did not shoot them. Cameron called 911 and said he believed his father stabbed his mother and he didn't know where his dad was. Serena had filed for divorce from Justin last year and everything was going on as it was. Despite the divorce, the couple was still living together, probably because of the kids. Police had previously been called to the house because Justin, had claimed that Serena assaulted him. Investigators determined that that was a hoax, another Democrat hoax, go figure. So if you do remember, Fairfax was lieutenant governor when Ralph Northam was accused of doing blackface. He was elected in 2019, but his office was marred by scandal because of the sexual assault and rape allegations of 2 women. And then he was replaced by Winsome Earl Sears in 2021. And Fairfax always denied the allegations. He said, yeah, I had sex with them, but they were consensual. Who knows? It was many, many years ago. I don't know that we're going to really ever hear about this again. It's a real tragedy, and I feel pretty bad for those kids. All right. Now, let us get into the main event. And let me also say thank you to Filter Dog, John Solomon on Round River. Okay. Well, in that case, then I will pull that up and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. All right. Now, so here we're going to hear from John Solomon in relation to a series of new investigations that are opening as a result of the current the current intelligence community inspector general. With the declassification of the fake Ukraine whistleblower claims and the exposure of this operation, it's leading to a reevaluation of many of these types of things that happened during President Trump's first term in office, because quite literally all of it was part of the same plot to take President Trump out. And John Solomon has said that President Trump will be declassifying a lot more in the coming days. We're hitting a sort of stride at this point.
We have some more news to bring to you from our bombshell impeachment story that broke a few days ago. Now we know that the chief watchdog for the U.S. spy agency, the new one, has opened a review of several urgent concern whistleblower cases that were handled under his predecessor during the Obama-Biden years. That is a very significant movement. That is a very significant consequence. Reopening several whistleblower cases that we now know from our reporting may have had great consequences against President Trump and against the country. We now know, of course, from the reporting earlier this week that exculpatory evidence, actually derogatory evidence about President Trump's accuser, the man who started the 2019 Ukraine impeachment, never got to Congress in a form that it could be used at the impeachment trial. That cheated the president out of a fair trial, out of a fair impeachment proceeding, as Alan Dershowitz told you. But remember what we reported a couple of weeks ago, that the intelligence community had detected that China had hacked into multiple states' voter registration databases in the 2020 election. Remember the one that everybody told us was perfect? Turns out it wasn't so perfect. There was a lot of hacking and bad things going on. Well, there was a whistleblower in that case. His case is now also being reviewed as part of the new Inspector General. The Inspector General's name is Christopher Fox. Remember that name. I think he's going to be a very consequential member of the intelligence community. Maybe we're going to get some accountability, some transparency that we've long been denied from our 18 spy agencies, the CIA, the FBI. You know them all. We've been talking about them. That is one of the many significant revelations that have come out in the 48 hours since we broke that story.
All right. So the fact that they are now going to be reevaluating all of these things that took place during the first Trump administration, obviously the plots to try to destroy him, but also the efforts to cover up anything that would have led to a free and fair election in 2020. Highly notable. Now, let's take a look at what Filter Dog's talking about with Operation Round River. All right, so this is a clip between him and Benny Johnson. He says, Solomon blew my mind with his prediction about deep state. Oh, you know what? I think I actually have this clip pulled up here somewhere. I've got a different version of it, but here, we'll take a look at this after I get through my flow. All right, so the important announcement from the last 24 hours is that after the reveal of that newly declassified information that was previously withheld from the White House. It was withheld from the committees that were investigating this stuff. Now we have criminal referrals that have been entered for both Eric Ciaramella, who was the fake whistleblower, and former Inspector General Michael Atkinson. So both of them broke laws in the course of this fake whistleblower setup, which led to the Ukraine impeachment. Now, also based upon the very nature of this and the way that it was carried out, it should likely lead to the expulsion of President Trump's Ukraine impeachment from the get-go. So with the Office of Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, sending these criminal referrals to the Justice Department, I'd also like to mention we now have a new Attorney General in Todd Blanche, and it seems like things are moving a little bit quicker with Todd Blanche at the helm. So this complaint is what triggered the 2019 impeachment, and the former Intelligence Community Inspector General Michael Atkinson, who notified Congress about these allegations. They both broke the law. The ODNI, Tulsi Gabbard, wrote in the referral to the Justice Department, "I want to refer information that may constitute possible criminal activity in violation of federal criminal law committed by one or more former employees of the intelligence community. The possible criminal activity concerns the circumstances described in the following congressional briefings: discussion with Intelligence Community Inspector General and the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence from 2019, briefing by the Intelligence Community Inspector General, again, House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence in 2019. Tulsi Gabbard having recently declassified these top secret documents related to that first impeachment that was led by then House Intel Chairman Adam Schiff, who had kept them classified, locked them away in a SCIF so that nobody would see them for years. The House Intelligence Community voted 2 days ago to release all of those transcripts from the 2019 hearings with Michael Atkinson, and Eric Ciaramella filing that whistleblower complaint in August 2019 over that July 25th phone call with President Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky, where he alleged not hearing the call, not being privy to any direct information, alleged that there was a quid pro quo relationship that was being set up between Trump, Zelensky, and an investigation of the Biden crime family. Now, as you know, Michael Atkinson changed the whistleblower form to include this non-firsthand information, essentially gossip, only changing it after Eric Ciaramella had made the claim in the first place. That is very important as to this criminal referral. Atkinson also admitted in a previous statement that the agency changed their own whistleblower rules because of this complaint from Eric Ciaramella, an employee of the CIA, a man who worked for Joe Biden, also a man that was directly involved with all of that criminal activity taking place in Ukraine. Now, the form, as it was written at the time of Eric Ciaramella's complaint, should never have been accepted because that form required firsthand information. The fact that it was secondhand information, the fact that it was merely a rumor, the only reason that it was accepted was because it was about the president of the United States. Now, he also is not part of the intelligence community. So Eric Ciaramella had no basis to file the whistleblower complaint for that as well. But again, Michael Atkinson accepted the complaint. We have multiple different reasons why this whistleblower complaint never should have been made, never should have been accepted, and after the fact, it was also later edited. That should never have been allowed to happen as well. The original form stated the whistleblower did not talk to Congress before filling out that form. But we also came to learn, this is one of the reasons Adam Schiff covered all of this up, is because he was meeting directly with Adam Schiff, who at that time was the head of the intelligence community. They attempted to cover that up. Adam Schiff went out and spoke to the social media companies, and that was the reason Eric Ciaramella's name was excised from the internet. You were not allowed to talk about it. And Adam Schiff also lied publicly when he said he had never spoken with the whistleblower. All of that should be enough to negate the 2019 Ukraine impeachment. Now, you might ask, what did they actually do wrong? Well, among other things, according to Paul Sperry, The DOJ would be investigating them for possible violations of 18 U.S.C. 1001. These would be false statement violations made by former ICIG Michael Atkinson and whistleblower Eric Ciaramella. They also worked hand in hand. They played a central role in creating the situation that led to President Trump's first impeachment. More than that, that first form that Eric Ciaramella used, he was required to have firsthand knowledge. He attested using this first form, which did not allow people to make whistleblower complaints based upon hearsay, which again would mean that the entire impeachment would be void as a result of it. It was not a legally accessible whistleblower complaint. Everything about it was wrong. And the fact that Atkinson secretly, he didn't publicly make the changes to that form. He secretly made changes to the form. He backdated its creation, which indicates a further conspiracy, a furtherance of the conspiracy at the time. The fact that Michael Atkinson made the change, backdated it, and then allowed the original complaint to go through, even with the knowledge that none of it was justified, is the fact that this is illegal. Now, you also may ask, what about the statute of limitations? Because we've talked about this. We talked about it yesterday. The fact that if you consider this to be part of the overarching ongoing conspiracy, well, then there is no statute of limitations because it's a RICO case. But the statute of limitations resets in such situations where new information is learned. The declassification of these documents itself resets the statute of limitations. So that would mean that Michael Atkinson and Eric Ciaramella could be tried on their own for crimes not specifically connected to that RICO case. Either way, there are a number of different avenues to go on it. Now, before we hear from Tulsi Gabbard, we'll go ahead and hear from John Solomon in this clip sent by Filter Dog first.
I think we're going to call, I'm going to give a code name. I know the FBI likes code names, so I'm going to make one up today. I think the President of the United States in the next couple of weeks will announce an operation. I would call the code name Hypersonic Clarity. We're going to get a level of transparency in a release and declassification of documents unparalleled in American history. The President's setting up something that I think will be unbelievable. There will be a speed of lightning, a speed of sound to release of documents. And those documents will help this prosecutorial team in Miami that's doing this hard work to not have to do secret proceedings and secret classified proceedings because the documents will be unclassified. The public will have transparency. The prosecutors will have. That will make it easier, I think, for the prosecutors to find the bad guys and sort the good guys from the bad guys out without having to have months
Agreed.
and years of secret proceedings, what are called Secrecy Act hearings, which slow everything down. They're going to ungum the trail, and things are going to move quickly. I do think there will be some accountability. There'll never be enough for what we went through the last 12 years. We were deprived of a fair election because of this meddling in these PSYOP operations. We've been kept from information about vulnerabilities in our election system, which I'm going to have some good stories on that next week. But transparency can speed the prosecutorial accountability project. It's something that the deep state did well to keep Bill Barr from achieving before 2020. I don't think this Justice Department is going to fall for that. I think there'll be a speed of disclosure and a speed of prosecution that we didn't see in past years. The grand conspiracy case will be the ultimate thing. Can they make that? To get a grand conspiracy, Benny, you're going to have to do what prosecutors do when they take down a mob boss, right? Remember, they had to flip Sammy the Bull to get the game.
Oh, yes. Okay. And this is honestly one of the reasons why I think that the Eric Swalwell exposure is so exciting, because Eric Swalwell is essentially penniless right now. Without his access to his congressional salary, the man does not have a savings. He doesn't have any assets, doesn't have any marketable skills now that he's been exposed as a rapist, allegedly, a druggist, allegedly, a sexual abuser, allegedly. Eric Swalwell is political poison right now. Nobody is going to want to hire Eric Swalwell. Nobody is going to want to do business with him. But considering the fact that he's being investigated in all of these different jurisdictions and the FBI is also investigating him for these crimes, they are also going to want to investigate everybody who knew about Eric Swalwell's crimes, because those people are most likely going to want to be held criminally accountable as well. Who was it that allowed Eric Swalwell to engage in this behavior that led to the victimization of these women? If Eric Swalwell is put under enough legal pressure, then that could lead to him flipping on Democrat leadership and trying to save his own skin. I don't think that Eric Swalwell is a man of principle, and I think that given the opportunity to perhaps save his own skin, he would be prone to do so.
Gambino family, they're going to have to take a capo in this intelligence law enforcement machinery and flip them. And if you get one big name person and you flip them, maybe a deputy FBI director, a senior FBI official, a senior intelligence council official, and you say, hey, we'll make a deal with the devil because you're going to testify up and down, I think they make that conspiracy case in a powerful way, and this begins to change very quickly. So keep an eye. Those are the things I'm watching for as a reporter in the next few weeks.
Okay, so I thought this was going to be about Operation Round River. I guess I don't know where that is from. I'll still have to look at that. But again, I go back to what I mentioned yesterday with the Hillary Clinton servers that would be in the hands of a foreign power being given to the United States government. I think a lot of foreign governments want to see Hillary Clinton taken down just as badly as you and I do. Also, the Anthony Weiner laptop. They could use either of those things to significantly bring somebody under the thumb of the Justice Department and force them to have to turn. But I do believe that John Solomon is correct. If take a look at every single mob case that's ever out there, you got to get somebody who's willing to talk. You got to get somebody who's willing to come forward and who's willing to save their own skin. With as large as this conspiracy is, my friends, I don't know that there's going to be a shortage of people who are willing to do that. And it's also one of the reasons why I'm comfortable with them taking their time to develop all of these cases and get as much evidence as possible so that they can bring a case of overwhelming legal superiority, place it in front of somebody and say, you, my friend, are effed. We are going to put you in prison for the rest of your life. But you do have an opportunity to roll on all of these other people that were involved in it with you. Darla says, is this the real reason why Demon Rats want to impeach? Evidence of the first attempt. I would say it may be one of the reasons why. I mean, I think that every single time they try to impeach President Trump, they know they're not going to get a conviction, but it doesn't mean they're not going to, try to do it. It slows things down. It takes President Trump's attention away from the things that really matter. It also is another stain on his legacy. And keep in mind, every single time you see these people doing something, they're not just doing it for one reason. They're looking to exploit opportunities for as many different value positions as they possibly can. It may definitely take the attention off of the fact that the first impeachment was fake. Okay, so, somebody did something wrong the first time, but we got him again. And look at this, President Trump still impeached twice, whatever it is. They're looking to exploit as many different things as they possibly can. Also, Filter Dog says, sent the wrong clip. This is the one. It's 4 minutes, but it's worth watching. Okay. Let me go ahead and we'll pull this one up too, buddy. Okay, so John Solomon breaks down the bombshell story that Just the News broke earlier today, that the FBI was running multiple investigations into Trump. We all know about Crossfire, Hurricane, and Arctic Frost, but Kash Patel's FBI has uncovered that there were other multiple investigations into Trump under Christopher Wray's FBI. The FBI literally treated the duly elected president as a national security threat for 9 years. Let that sink in. The man the majority of Americans voted into office was treated like a national security threat by the people trying to cling on to power. From the moment President Trump secured the nomination in the summer of 2016 to raising his hand for the second inauguration in 2025, he was subjected to 4 straight consecutive counterintelligence probes. The FBI essentially treated the man twice elected as president as a national security threat. That's what a counterintelligence investigation is. Now, those 4 probes that we know about, we've got Crossfire Hurricane. That's the Russia collusion hoax. Number 2, Round River. They treated anyone who looked into Hunter Biden as a national security threat. I guess that's me. Number 3, Plasmic Echo. That was the investigation into Susie Wiles and Kash Patel. That was the one we recently heard about. And then, of course, Arctic Frost, investigations into Trump and MAGA supporters for the 2020 election. The levels of corruption just keep getting worse and worse as we find out more and more. There was no red line that they would not cross to get Trump. People need to go to jail, and they will. I believe so. All right, let's take a listen.
Now, we'll have a scoop for you tonight. We've got another bombshell story to start the show off with. President Donald Trump and his supporters were targeted by 4 consecutive FBI codename counterintelligence investigations over the last decade. Now, I want that to sink in. From the moment President Trump secured the nomination in the summer of 2016 to the moment he raised his hand for his second inauguration in January 2025, he was subjected to 4 straight consecutive counterintelligence probes, each of them designed to try to find some form of criminality against him. Each of them, or in total, they subjected hundreds of innocent Americans to privacy-invading tactics, things like their phone records being taken, grand jury subpoenas, extraordinary developments and intrusions on their everyday life. And the FBI, before Kash Patel came in, essentially treated the man twice elected president as a national security threat. That's what a counterintelligence investigation is. That means for almost the first 9 years of his career, the FBI only saw Donald Trump as a potential threat to national security. Those are according to documents and interviews we conducted here at Just the News over the last 6 months. Director Patel has personally led the effort to find these 4 operations. Here are the 4 code names. Crossfire Hurricane, you know that one well. That's about Russia collusion, now debunked. Round River, one you probably never heard of until today. That's the one that looked at people who dared to look at Hunter Biden and treated them as though they were a national security threat. Russian disinformation artists. I have a funny feeling I'll be in those files. Plasmic Echo, that's the one that took Kash Patel's and Susie Wiles' phone records before they became FBI director and White House chief of staff. There's also an allegation that the FBI in that investigation might have looked at or listened in on one of Susie Wiles' conversations with her lawyer. And then the last one that we've talked a lot about on the show the last few months since we first broke it, Arctic Frost, an investigation that looked at the president and his supporters' efforts to submit alternative electors to the Senate after the 2020 election as a criminal conspiracy, even though John F. Kennedy and a candidate all the way back in 1876 did the exact same thing, and they never got prosecuted. In fact, they were deemed to just be protesting as they're allowed to before the government, but in Donald Trump's case, the FBI viewed it as criminal. Those are the far-reaching dragnet investigations that really basically targeted the president for the majority of his political career. One of the things we're learning, a lot of the information that predicated those investigations may have been based on false, misleading, or uncorroborated justifications. That's what we're learning, that they didn't.
Now, this is why it's so important that President Trump declassify all of this information. Going back to John Solomon's earlier point, if the information is unclassified, then all of the trials and the legal investigations can be public as well. Then there's nothing that they need to withhold from the public. At this point, the only reason classification exists is to protect the guilty from the accountability that every single one of us desperately needs.
Have the goods to really justify the opening of the investigation. That's what John Durham said about Crossfire Hurricane. We're starting to see that is the case in these other investigations as well. Now, why were these things so secret for so long? Why didn't we know about them before today? Because the old FBI under Chris Wray hid these files even from most of their FBI agents. They were marked prohibited access, meaning that the FBI leadership controlled access to them very carefully, and they were kept off the radar. In fact, so far off the radar that Kash Patel didn't find him when he first came in. He wasn't told about him when he first came in. How did he learn about him? Because whistleblowers have come forward inside his agency, or in some cases, going to Congress. People like Senator Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. That's how they learned about all of these files. Some of them were only found in the last few months. And when I say people were targeted, I'll just give you one example. Documents that we actually saw, correspondence between a person who served in President Trump's first administration, was an advisor in the 24 campaign, and in between dared to make a documentary movie about Hunter Biden and his exploits in Ukraine. He was subjected to a criminal investigation. And one of the things that we learned when you see the FBI documents that we made public this morning, his emails in which he was giving private advice to the 2024 Trump campaign, they were obtained by the FBI. Raises a lot of concerns, right? A lot of the people who were targeted in these investigations, according to the records that we reviewed, were people who are called special circumstances subjects, meaning they had certain protections, a journalist, First Amendment protection, a congressman or their staff, the separation of powers in Congress and in the Constitution, lawyers, the attorney-client privilege, and yet they all were targeted in these 4 investigations. We're going to have a whole lot more of that over the course of the next few days and over the next few weeks. We expect.
All right. Yes, he says we expect to see these files to be declassified. Snarf, I absolutely understand what you are going through. I thought the same thing. When I learned the truth about World War II, when I learned the truth about the Central Intelligence Agency, when I learned the truth about how widespread this corruption is, I was sick to my stomach. I thought to myself, my God, it can never be reformed. But here we are years later, and we are actively watching it be reformed. To blame America for the sins of people is akin to blaming your family for your father committing murder. It's not a reflection on everyone. It's not a reflection on the founding fathers. The nation was co-opted by a criminal cartel many, many years ago. Banking, business, industry, politics, all in league with each other. But it is not an indictment of America itself. It's not an indictment of the people of this great nation. We have an opportunity here to clean this shit up, and that is what I believe is happening. ZBM says, am I the only one who doesn't believe enough young people are not getting into farming, but they just simply not able to because of how difficult and expensive the deep state has made it? No, you are absolutely correct. This is why people get out of farming, because they have moved farming into this impossible category where the only way you can do it is to have access to capital funding, corporate interests. And of course, the equipment is absolutely unattainable for most people. The land is simply unattainable for most people. That is exactly what's happening. All right, so Tulsi Gabbard last night, I believe this is before she actually put forth those criminal referrals, gave an interview with Katie Pavlich, and she spoke at length about the seriousness of the illegal actions that led to the 2019 Ukraine impeachment hoax. And as I have said and will continue to say, Tulsi Gabbard is the MVP of Trump 2.0. She quite literally is the linchpin to bringing forward all of this stuff. Doesn't matter who even is at these other agencies, because the DNI oversees all of the intelligence community. Now, let's go ahead and pull up her clip right here with Katie Pavlich. Oh, shit. Okay. They freaking took the link out of the article. What the heck? Let me see. You know what? Forget it. We're almost out of time. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. So we know what's going on. It's bad. She referred them. Hopefully they go to jail. All right. Now, okay. So basically, this is a clip. I'm not going to play it because we kind of hit on everything that he talked about previously. But this is, again, just John Solomon suggesting that President Trump is about to declassify all of these records. And we should, well, maybe I will, because he says we expect to see action on John Brennan's indictments by the end of the month.
Well, first, I think the president will be taking some action in the next couple of weeks to create, I think we could give it a code name. The FBI liked code names when they went after the president. I like a code name. I think I would call this Operation Hypersonic Clarity. I think what will happen is, these documents, it took me 8 months to get these documents out of ODNI. And I want to thank Director Gabbard for having the courage to fight with the deep state to get them out. but it shouldn't take 8 months in a administration that's committed to getting this information out to do it. I think the president's going to create a process to get a mass avalanche of what we need to know.
So S2G109, the reason I don't think this is a rug pull is because President Trump is doing all of this intentionally to help save America, to set us up for a future where we don't have to live like this, where we don't have to be subjected to this same type of criminal activity. If he doesn't do this, if he isn't successful, then you better believe that they're going to seize power once again as soon as they can. And they are not going to allow Trump to live. They're not going to allow many of us to live. They are going to come down on us harder than they did previously, and they nearly destroyed all of us. Let's see. Cat Portland says, Zach, Trump posted the CO's views were tanking, but actually she never had more views than she's had in the last several episodes. Anyone know what Trump's intentions are by saying that are you talking about Candace Owens? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't follow Candace Owens. I don't care for Candace Owens. I know a lot of people do, but I've learned a bunch of stuff about Candace Owens, and she's just not my cup of tea.
Truths we were denied the last 10 years out. It also will benefit the prosecutors in Florida who can get tied up with the deep state or procedures like SEPA, State Secrets Act hearings, which can...
If anything, I mean, he's probably just not happy with her talking shit about him all the time.
Tie you down for months. Get everything declassified quickly. Transparency is the first shot of the cannon. Then I think you'll see the decisions made by the end of this month on Brennan. It sounds like that's where they're headed towards there. And then Comey maybe in May, and then some others after that. If you're going to get a grand conspiracy case, you got to start. We all need to think about what we learned when we watched the mod movies, right? The Godfather or
Okay, he's just going to basically go over that same stuff again. All right. Yeah, you know, guys, there's a lot of people out there who are fantastically wealthy off of the things that they say. I am not one of them. I show up every day and I just tell you what I think. All right, now, this is important because of what just happened with the release of this information from the DNI. Alexander Dubinsky is the opposition leader to Zelensky in Ukraine, and Zelensky had him arrested and imprisoned basically for acting as a journalist and speaking out against him. Now, he's got an appeal that he filed, and after he filed this appeal, he says that the Ukrainian courts have now opened an official investigation into USAID's activities in Ukraine. We learned that USAID money was being funneled back into the United States to essentially oppose President Trump. Clearly, at that time, we said we need to know who it was that was involved in this. Now, the probe into this money being funneled back to go after President Trump is being handled by NABU. NABU is the corruption organization, the corruption court in Ukraine that has recently arrested basically half of Zelensky's government. So NABU is investigating exactly how USAID was operating in Ukraine. They were a clandestine arm of the Central Intelligence Agency. We know this. That included their connections to Ukrainian government officials and the groups that were receiving the grant money. I would also not be surprised if we learned of a more direct linkage between Brandon Routh and USAID, because he clearly was operating openly in Ukraine. Actually, the investigation will be on how U.S. taxpayer dollars were misused in Ukraine by activists and organizations linked to George Soros and other so-called civil society groups, NGOs as we call them. This fits in with the ongoing efforts by the Department of Justice and the ODNI to track down and stop any waste, fraud, and abuse of American aid money that was sent through USAID. So very interesting development, and it's exactly what I would expect to happen, because clearly the thread of corruption must be followed everywhere. We know that there is a huge emphasis on Ukraine, and President Trump's efforts are leading us directly where these crimes were being committed. Hi, Cisco. What's up, buddy? Okay, Sabrado says, if we don't impeach these judges, I don't know how we're ever going to get out from under this. The president of, I think, El Salvador said we have to do that. Yep, Nayib Bukele, he did say that. And that has to be done by Congress. It's really unfortunate. Currently, with the people sitting in Congress, again, I just don't think there is an appetite for that. But There's a lot of people leaving. There's a lot of other people who are running. And if we have our elections shored up by the time the by the time the midterms hit, then I think we'll be in a better position to do that. As an example of one of the things that has to be addressed, and this is why the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ is suing Colorado for their voter rolls. In Colorado, here is proof that if you just use a slightly different variation on your name, a different gender, different date of birth, or a different spelling of your name, if you use your middle name first rather than your first name, the state government of Colorado is likely to then produce a second voter ID and then automatically mail you 2 mail-in ballots. So then essentially you get 2 votes. Clearly, this is happening. Here's an example of what happens when you do that. You have somebody named Jax Anthony. You have 2 different voter registration dates and 2 active voter ID numbers. The name is or Anthony Jax, and then the last name is actually crossed out. Same with Alex Kentrell, last name unknown, but you have the same person, Alexander Kentrell, and they have 2 different voter registration dates about, a couple of weeks apart, 3 weeks apart. Alicia, last name, birth date 1987. Again, Alicia Noel, last name, birth date 1989. 2 different voter registration records, and it goes on and on and on. This is the reason that Democrats and rhinos are trying to stop the Department of Justice from clearing out these voter rolls. And finally, it would appear that Peter Tickton is seeking the position of Attorney General from President Trump. Peter Tickton's been a guest on the program before. He and President Trump have known each other since they were teenagers. They went to military school together. And this is written by somebody who is supporting Peter Tickton for Attorney General. I don't know how likely it is, but I do know that Peter Tickton and President Trump still have a great relationship. He is President Trump's personal attorney on a number of matters, and President Trump tasked him with looking into things related to January 6th. And pretty much now, all January 6th cases have been wiped off. People have either gotten commutations, they've gotten pardons, they've had their convictions reversed, and as an example, Joe Biggs. Joe Biggs for, a while was, kind of upset that he only got a commutation and he didn't get a full pardon because that meant that he couldn't get his military benefits back and he was, a convicted felon for the rest of his life. He was one of those people who just had his conviction completely overturned. Joe Biggs is also going to receive $10,000 a day for the 4 years that he was in prison. He's going to get $11 million or more. He's going to get back pay restored. He's going to get his military pension restored. He's going to get his medical benefits restored. And the same thing is happening for every single American citizen who was unlawfully persecuted by the Biden Department of Justice over January 6th. So very, very good news. John Eastman also, of course, yesterday, Filter Dog let us know that he had his bar, the California bar had revoked his law license. Let's hear from John on this because he obviously wants the Department of Justice to take action.
The fact that they would disbar me for, among other things, speaking on your show or writing an op-ed or giving a speech. This is core protected First Amendment rights, and urging the vice president to do something about the illegality. That's core right to petition the government for redress of grievances, and that they would do this in a disciplinary proceeding that was the longest and most expensive in our nation's history, in all likelihood, before a judge who was just dripping with animosity throughout the 10-week-long trial. And a reporter named Rachel Alexander watched every single day. You actually broadcast some of the proceedings yourself. Anybody that watched those proceedings just came away stunned at how one-sided it was. Hearsay evidence coming in on the other side, left and right, and being blocked on my side. One of the key issues was whether any reasonable lawyer would have filed the Texas versus Pennsylvania original action in the Supreme Court. And we offered the briefs of 17 different states' attorney generals that did exactly the same thing I did. And she said those were not relevant. But the briefs on the other side of that very same case that took issue with us were all admitted into evidence. I mean, this is how lopsided the thing was. And so that's a federal due process problem as well. And look, we've got to be very clear here. This is much bigger than my own bar license. What's going on here is a leftist Marxist capture of our institutions and then weaponizing them to destroy any political opposition to the deep globalist state that is getting entrenched in this country. And because I stood up to illegality in the 2020 election, other than President Trump himself and perhaps Rudy Giuliani, I've become target number one because I won't stop talking about the illegality and trying to shine a light on it and be like Paul Revere warning our fellow American citizens of what's about to happen if we don't fix this.
All right, so what can we do to fix it? I don't know. That's the problem here. So much corruption, but I believe that we are working to sort it out right now. All right, now, I'll end with this because people are still attacking President Trump over the Epstein shit. It's an op. The whole thing is an op. President Trump was asked about Epstein victims testifying before Congress, and he said, sure, I'd love it.
The First Lady last week called on Congress to further look into and uncover the truth on the Epstein files, the Epstein saga. Do you believe that there should be a public hearing for more of these Epstein survivors?
Well, I'm okay with it. I think we've had a lot of public hearings. I'm okay with it, but I understand that the women didn't want to go under oath. That's what I heard, that the women, the victims or whatever, they refused to go under oath, which was a little surprising. Now, Melania felt strongly about it because she was accused of that I met her through Epstein, but it turned out to be totally false. It was a false oath.
Now, I think some of those women who claim to be victims, they don't want to go under oath because they're not actually victims. They're grifters. They're taking advantage of an opportunity to get millions upon millions of dollars from the estate of Jeffrey Epstein. Also, they're being used by Democrat mouthpieces who seek to use the insinuation of their relationship to Jeffrey Epstein and suggestions that President Trump has done something untoward. They're using them for that purpose, much in the same way that E. Jean Carroll was used as well. All right, before we go and before I read the final donations from over on Pilled, my friends, banks are not your friends. You are all aware of this. They can cancel your accounts. They can freeze your cards. They can decide what you're allowed to buy, what you're allowed to say, who you're allowed to support, because big banks and financial institutions have total control over your money, and they know it. This is why financial independence matters now more than ever. Introducing the Rumble Wallet. It's a wallet built for real freedom. With Rumble Wallet, you control your money. No bank, no government, no tech company. You can buy digital assets like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin all in one secure place. There's no permission necessary, no middlemen, no cancel button. When you want to support the creators you actually believe in, you can use the Rumble Wallet app to tip them directly, and 100% of that goes right to them. It's secure, instant, and without any interference. It's not a credit line that they can shut off. It is your wallet. It's permanent to protect for the future and your family. Because when the system fails, when institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. And the Rumble Wallet is not about politics. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control today. You can use the QR code on screen to download the Rumble Wallet now and step away from big banks for good. You'll get true ownership, true protection, and true financial freedom. You can also just search the Rumble Wallet in the App Store on your device or go to wallet.rumble.com. Thank you very much to them. Also, don't forget, right now, over at onenessdrops.com, there is a buy one, get one free sale. onenessdrops.com/promo/redpill78. And every single thing you purchase, whether it's their chlorine dioxide water purification kits or the mullein extract or the soursop tincture or the DMSO, you will get an automatic free version of that in your cart. You don't need to add it to the cart. Just use the promo code and they will just double your order, whatever it is you order. Also, of course, if you purchase one of their bundles, you'll get a bigger discount and they'll give you a second bundle for free. So head on over to onenessdrops.com/promo/redpill78. The link is in the description. Also, my friend Mike Lindell over at mypillow.com. Use code RP78. You'll save up to 80% off of everything Mike has. And of course, you'll also be supporting his run for Minnesota governor. Believe he is still the front runner. Also, my friend Jordan over at consciousstrength.net/RP78. You'll save 10% off of all of Jordan's natural products. And this is where I get my methylene blue, as well as a whole bunch of other good things. And finally, my friends over at rncstore.com/RP78 for their Laetrile B17 products. If you don't know what Laetrile and B17 is good for, you need to look it up because I can't say it over on YouTube. There are many sponsors of the program. All of them are listed in the description below. Thank you so much to Brightcore, and thank you so much to MCG Tactical. Final thank yous. Brewbark says, what are your top Great Awakening picks? Voter fraud, 0 Point Energy, Flat Earth, Aliens, 9/11, Moon Landing, Illuminati, Council on Nicaea, Nag Hammadi Scriptures. I'm going to go for one, and that is the elections. That includes vote fraud and everything that comes along with it. I think that the elections are the most important because without free and fair elections, we the people do not control this country. And that's probably the biggest reason why people are black-pilled and thinking that there's nothing we're going to be able to do. Because the idea that elections would be fixed even in time for the midterms is pretty much off the table for a lot of people out there. So I am going to stick with the exposure of the stolen election of 2020 and the overall fraudulent nature of our elections. That must be addressed. Because if it isn't addressed, then we're not the ones driving this ship here. All right, you guys, that need to say thank you to One Thunder for the can and Judy the Lady Pug for the cookie. I appreciate that. And yeah, in other news radio, DMSO, good for so many things. A long time ago, I played a 60 Minutes report from, God, the 1970s about it. TravsKittens.com. All right, let's go ahead and look at TravsKittens.com before we go. Because I forgot to tell you that Lisa and I actually did check out your kittens. Okay, so this is a live camera feed of our friend Chafed Bum's kittens. And looks like, Denise Ann says, Stuart Rhodes and Enrique Tarrio were on Viva Fry and they are not happy with their cases are overturned. They wanted the appeal to hold the DOJ and others accountable. Yes, I saw that Enrique Tarrio said that. And I think that ultimately the paperwork to overturn their cases doesn't necessarily mean that those people at the DOJ will not be held accountable. So, unfortunately, it didn't happen in the way that they wanted it, but I think that it's still about as best a thing as we can hope for. So, we'll wait and see what happens with that. But these little kitties, look at them. Oh, my God, they're so cute. God, how many of them, dude? Are these two different litters? Sue Castellano says, yeah, Brad and Abby left Badlands several weeks ago. They have a new show they're doing on Tuesday nights. Is that you? Is that you right now? Oh, that's great. Well, how many kittens are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Are there 19 kittens? Holy jeez, 18 and 3 litters. My gosh. Dude, you got your hands full. I like your little setup, though. That is crazy. All right. Awesome. Well, listen, thank you for that, Chafed Bum. And thank you to everybody for hanging out with us today. We'll see you guys tomorrow right here at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Until that time, good luck, God bless, and don't stop fighting.